Hey everyone. So it's interesting how my mind works because I was thinking for a long time what my first anime video would be on. It could be on one of my favorites like Outlaw Star or Eden of the East, or I could talk about something like Hellsing or Chainsaw Man or like Berserk, something like that. Something people are going to be like, yeah, Fritz probably likes that. But no, I decided my first anime review video is going to be on arguably the most generic shonen ever made, Fairy Tail. And you're not going to believe it, but I actually quite like it so far. I'm about 48 episodes in, finished with the first season. Sorry, they're they're doing work outside my apartment. But anyway, yeah, I quite like it. And I think it's more to do with the fact that so much of modern anime is so awful that this is good in comparison, or at least I would call it refreshing, simple, and quaint. Because in the era of an endless stream of garbage isekai, and like everything has to have the deepest lore, everything's got to be edgy, all morality has to be gray, a show where it's nice and simple, focused on action, characters, and set piece stories, where the good guys and bad guys are clearly defined, is really refreshing, and it feels so quaint and enjoyable. And yeah, so I'll get into this. Isn't going to be all that in depth at all, and it's going to be a pretty short video because this is just my initial thoughts on it. But yeah, it's refreshing. And if you're interested in watching, I would give it a watch. I would say, if you want a nice simple shonen with very simple but very likable characters and a pretty straightforward plot, I would recommend it. So let me get into kind of the premise of it. If you didn't know, it is a fantasy world, which I kind of like how a lot of shonen and anime stuff do fantasy worlds sometimes, when they're not just trying to be the classic Western Tolkien fantasy with like elves and dwarves and stuff like that. I kind of like it where a lot of them will have a world in which people can use magic and there's like fairies and dragons and stuff like that. Um, but there's also a lot of modern technology. Like in Fairy Tail, people will be casting spells, people will be like putting on magic armor and using like magic weapons and stuff, but they'll also be wearing like modern clothes, and they'll be like taking the train, and they'll have to worry about like paying the rent. And it's kind of a fun way of doing fantasy, wherein it's like, if you can talk to each other through a crystal ball, why do you need cell phones? And so it's kind of a fun mix. It reminds me of like some Studio Ghibli stuff. But in this world, as far as I know, there's different types of wizards, people that can use magic. Like main character Natsu can use fire magic, you can use ice magic, water magic, that sort of stuff. You can like use enchanted armor, or you can, like the other main character Lucy, use what's called celestial magic, where you can summon spirits from another dimension that will like do things for you. Like there's a giant bull that can fight for you, or like Lucy will hide inside a clock. The show isn't really meant to be taken that seriously, I know, but uh yeah, so nice simple premise, and you've got like, it's set in this nice simple little fantasy kingdom called Fiori, and in it you've got wizarding guilds where, different wizards kind of come together and they'll like take on quests to get money, and very, very simple. And the guild's name that all the characters are in is called Fairy Tail, and they're like the kind of dysfunctional family, a lot of young people there, run by, your classic kind of crazy but kind of perverted old man, but has got a very good heart. And you've got your classic shonen characters, like Natsu is the kind of pig-headed, happy-go-lucky main character. Gray is the brooding rival. Lucy is the girl. Urza is the best girl. And, each kind of miniature arc kind of goes through It goes in depth with different characters, like how Lucy was from a really rich family that basically hired a bunch of mercenaries to try and kill all of her friends because she ran away from home. Urza was part of like a cult and a child slave, and like the past is kind of coming back to haunt her and stuff like that. And they're having adventures, and it passes this test that it does the thing a lot that I think anime does incredibly well, which is scenes that show characters just having, like, relaxing together, like, eating together, going to a restaurant, just kind of hanging out. Some are taking a nap, and it's like in these snapshots, and like stuff like One Piece or others, or like Chainsaw Man will do this as well, where it's just like each character just in one shot will, like, you can see their entire personality there. Like, one of them will be sleeping, one of them will be eating really fast, one of them will be like playing with something, and this show does it really well. And but yeah, it's about as simple as you can get, and honestly, that's, I think, a good thing. The characters are pretty morally black and white. And it's like my friend Argent says, where the final red pill is that tropes are good. And this is, I think, a case of that, where I don't want, like, oh, the government's secretly evil, or like, there is no real good guys or bad guys. It's just like, hey, everything is nihilistic. This is a world where that's not the case. And speaking of, is something that it does that I really like, that a lot of shows and stories don't do anymore, is make you actually care about the world and society and, like, home that they have. You want to see them win and protect this, the way of life that they have, the country, the guild, their friends, and all that. It's like in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, where the movies and the show set up the Republic to be completely corrupt, completely incompetent, the Jedi Order to be completely mismanaged and a bunch of idiots, to the point that, especially in like our sphere, you're thinking, wow, the Separatists and Palpatine are the good guys. They're right. They're completely right and justified in what they're doing, because this system is causing all of the problems, and you're supposed to root for the heroes that are trying to uphold this horribly corrupt system. Or like Harry Potter, where like they just brush under the rug that, like, Dumbledore and the Ministry of Magic are really, really awful, and like are constantly putting children's lives in danger and are completely oblivious to very obvious problems. Or like, how in One Piece, yeah, just objectively speaking, the world government is evil. Or in like 1,000 isekai, fantasy settings, oh, the government's evil. And like, there's a place for nuance, but there's also a place for something straightforward of good and evil. And like in this, the guild master Makarov is like, he's like Dumbledore if he was like the cool grandpa, and he's also not a moron. Like, he doesn't actually actively try and put the guild members' lives in danger, and actually treats them like family, and that's real good. And yeah, I'm sorry I don't have that much to say. It's the first time I've actually tried reviewing anime, and I'm doing it on one that it's just my kind of first thoughts, and it's a very simple, straightforward one. And once again, I think that's actually a good thing. But yeah, I had something else to say on it, and it's that I... No, yeah. It's sorry if this isn't a longer video, but sometimes simplicity is really good. Simplicity is beauty. It is the fact that this is a show about friendship, it's about action, and it's about good versus evil, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it feels like Fairy Tail is completely and totally honest about what it is. It's guileless, and that's a good way I would describe it. Is Fairy Tail is guileless. It knows it's simple, but it does treat the characters with enough respect, at least so far. I know people are going to point out this show has a ton of fan service, which there is, and you know what? Like, at the very least, so far, almost 50 episodes in, I like the characters, I like the story, I like this world, and they seem to like the world too. And the people that made this world seem to like it enough to keep it simple and not make you actively hate everything about it. Like, just to end is the fact that, sure, the characters are pretty, bog standard for shonen, but at least a lot of those basic tropes are likable, as opposed to, like, isekai protagonists who are almost all universally awful people, because the whole point is that they're just trying to cheat in a video game. But my rant on why isekai is disgusting and awful, that's another time. But I hope you got some edification out of this. I'm just happy to be making videos again. So, anyways, have a good night.